trying to find out who controls all the money, what controls everything. There's 176 corporations that control about 60% of the world's economy. That means these 176 corporations control the world economy. And the shareholders in this are something like 7 families. So 7 families control 70% of the world's, 60% of the world's wealth, give or take.
I think it was one of the Rockefellers once was asked, when have you got enough? And he stopped and said, and thought about it, and then he said, just a little more.
A lot of these people, they're creating segregation through us, through creating systems created by the Crown. And the Crown is a system that controls our nation. The Crown is our government. The Crown is disconnection. The more we contract with the Crown, the more disconnected from that earth and from each other we become. Unfortunately, it's become about corporations. Such things as the TPPA reinforce corporate greed over people, where whole corporations from other countries can come to New Zealand and sue us for future profit, loss of future profit, if we do things that are against their philosophy, their corporate ego and their corporate identities.
As I visit all the people I interview and hear their stories, I'm all the more surprised why my interviewees often get branded conspiracy theorists by those who just want to stay asleep. If all this makes so much sense, then why do so many people not care? Why do you think it is that people find it so hard to
Because it's true.
And people don't want truth?
No.
People are very receptive to honesty. However, at the same time, they reject it and they don't value it.
We are suffering, we are burdened, we are heavy. We've been enduring many years of evolution. And we have a lot of history under the bridge and under our belts and on our backs that we carry around with us. Memories, whether that's DNA memory, whether that's unconscious memory, whether it's the memory in the waters, we are storing our history. And that's a lot of weight to carry around.
My own belief is that we're in a boot camp.
Planet Earth's a boot camp.
That planet Earth is a boot camp.
We're designed to come from a place of unconsciousness and become conscious. We're designed to learn like a child.
We're actually cosmic beings. I'm interested as a physicist in plasma physics. I believe that, 99%, the physicists know, 99% of the universe is plasma, which is very low density matter. It's non-atomic matter. It's electrically charged particles. And these particles are blown off by stars into space. And the space plasma is electrically active. And life is based on electrical activity. So this plasma is much better for life than atomic matter. So I believe there's a strong possibility that space is full of these plasmic beings that are ancient and that they've actually, they're coming into these atomic bodies, that they've actually created these atomic bodies. They're using water, which is very like plasma. It's got electrical activity, and they're, if you like, in the evolutionary process, but I believe it's directed by intelligence and held by fields, and these fields are electromagnetic fields, which are based on plasma. You've got a little tiny drop of water suspended in a jelly, suspended as a jelly in protein, which is the cell, and you get the electrical activity in that cell, which in our case, these cells are suspended on sticks of stone, which we call bone. So I think that these, and this is what the Cathars taught, is that these angelic beings have actually evolved us and brought us into being. So we are those beings. You see, what I believe is that we're plasmic beings. If you take plasma, plasma is low density matter, it's invisible and it fills space. And that's the definition for spirit. As plasmic beings, I think we've actually created atomic matter. I believe the same fields, the morphogenetic fields, the life fields behind life forms, which scientists like Harold Saxton Burr, Rupert Sheldrake talk about, these fields also hold the atom. I don't think the atom's that random. They're very precise quantum states.
If these bodies were designed for us to experience life on Earth, then why did we design such a limited version?
I've spent my life working on this vortex physics. And one of the conclusions I come to is that the vortex, which is the electron, every electron is a whirlpool of light, a whirlpool of energy, but there's no end to it. It stretches into infinity. So these electrically charged particles that make up plasma are infinite in extension, which means that when you move one, the movement is affected to the end of the universe. So all knowledge is known everywhere in plasma. You can't hold secrets. It's unlimited knowledge. Everything's connected by the infinite extension of the electron. And this is one of the things Einstein proved, is the, the non-locality of electrons. So the thing is that we've created this limited state so that we can be in amnesia, so that we can be in a situation of not knowing, so that we can be limited. Because there are certain lessons that we need to learn as divine beings, as God-made man. The word human, the word hu is Egyptian, it's a human, the God-man being.
If there was only love and light and that was it, and that's all we knew and that's all we were, there would be no humanity, there would be no journey, there would be no point to all of this.
When a person incarnates, they may decide to put themselves on pause, meaning they don't become aware of who they are really and what they're here to do. They might put themselves on pause in a sense because they need to become part of Wall Street banking or whatever it is, and they're not meant to become aware of what's going on really until they get into becoming the bank manager. And 2012 arrives, they're in a nice position, they're on the inside. So how many hundreds of thousands of people in those positions all over the planet have just awoken and are about to wake up?
You get your epiphany, and that's coming fast and thick for a lot of people these days. For a lot of people, the gateway was 9/11. A lot of people woke up to 9/11, not completely, but they woke up to the fact that their government was lying to them yet again, my God, and immediately closed down. Because to go down that path meant to continue to open doors to the real deal.
Live in this current society where people get ostracized, rejected, and called conspiracy theorists for talking about things that are outside of the norm, where people have this tall poppy syndrome and that prevents them from even having the motivation to express, let alone fulfill the promise of original ideas. Can you blame them for not thinking originally? Can you blame them for being ignorant? No, because you don't get rewarded for being intelligent. You get rewarded for exploitation.
Oh, so you've got your ecology and your economics under siege at the same time, and it's no coincidence because both of them are completely out of balance with, the creative solutions that the cosmos developed to allow humanity to live as it does.
If you go up to a giant pyramid and you think, ooh, that's a huge stone, bro. How am I going to lift that? Do you try to lift it yourself? No, because it's too big. You don't bother. So, that's where humanity's at. They think the problem's so big that they can't do it.
It's like we talk about addiction, and it's easy to say we're addicted to alcohol or we're addicted to drugs or our medication, but there's an addiction to struggle. There's an addiction to being stuck. And in a way, it feels comfortable because it's what we know. We get trapped in what we know. And so it's easy to come home at the end of a hard day of work and slump in front of the TV after a couple of glasses of wine and to just blob out. And for life to just keep happening, on and on it goes, and we don't really take responsibility for getting out of that rut, doing something different that brings us back into our more natural state.
I've got this basket as an example. The way this basket was made is that the weaver soaked these fibers in water before weaving them. And then once the basket pattern had been woven, then it sets solid and keeps its shape. Now this is what happens in the brain. In a young brain, it's almost like the pliable cane that's been soaked. You can manipulate the dendrites, you can manipulate the pattern in the brain. And then what happens is, as the brain sets, as it grows older, you get a template where you get a set pattern that's very difficult, it's very rigid, you can't change it. So if you can get hold of a child and teach them, program them, whilst the brain is pliable, then a pattern sets for the rest of their lives. This is why the Jesuits say, give me a child from 0 to 7 and you can keep him for the rest of his life.
As we get into be adults and we have all these problems that we've got to face and deal with, all the bills we've got to pay and all the difficulties we have with coping with work and extra time for this and running children here and there, we're just stuck. And it's a treadmill we can't get off.
We've got a whole system which is basically sets people up in terms of their socialisation to be compliant.
The problem we have today is that people are burdened down by debt. They're in survival mode and they just want to get through to the next day.
Human beings aren't evil, you know.
That's
we
right.
want to be in harmony.
That's right.
The way our body looks for harmony, our mind wants to do the same. It's constantly thinking of systems of how can I bring it back.
Are you willing to take responsibility for your own thoughts totally? Regardless of who is running the show, for you not to take responsibility for your own thoughts is automatically giving them power over you. The fact is that when you start to wake up and you want desperately to go back to sleep, you can if you want to, but it ain't gonna do you no good. Once you start, having a look at, it's like a hologram. You take one little piece, blow it up, and it's the whole fucking picture.
Humanity has been taught that the mind is the dominant aspect because we see that that's what it's creating our outside world, okay? Well, the mind is a very powerful aspect and it does create the outside world, but one of the biggest problems with that is we've come to a stage now where we've created so much in the outside world, it's time to revert back to the inside world. And
Bring the attention that goes out there, bring it back here, and appreciate what's been given to you.
Well, the mind's overloading with thought.
Right.
Okay, so the mind thinks so much. I mean, it's like, for example, still the mind. That statement is delusional, okay? That's an impossibility in science for the mind to become still. Focus the mind, send it on a journey, put it in a tree, create a mantra, okay, there.
My mind thinks it knows what life is all about, what it is to be a human being, what it is to love another person. But actually, really, that gets me in a mess. That creates a lot of problems. The other side is to know what love is, to know what life is, to know what's the truth, to know reality, because I can feel it, because it exists, because I have something else which actually has the capacity to know, rather than to think that I know.
One of the things about the human mind is, unless you instruct it to do something, it does whatever it wants, okay? So if I'm moving along with my mind thinking a lot, repeating my thought here and there, then I go, hang on, I want to stop that, okay? So I go and do something to stop that. Unless I repeat that stopping principle point, the mind will just go back onto its same journey of externalizing everything around it. So if you're using your mind only to create your external reality, in most cases your expectation, you'll have disappointment and things like that, and a lot of this stuff will arise in your life. But if you're using your entire being to create and using your mind as the channeled point of that creation, then you will be a lot more powerful. An exercise I get, particularly with our 21st Century Youth Program, what I get the youth to do is go in the mirror every morning, and the first exercise they do it for 7 times. So they go, they go, I love myself, okay?
I love you, me. I love you, me. Me. To bring awareness to the self, to the all that is right here, expressed in this body, is something so unique, so precious, so magnificent. It's worth humbling to, it's worth coming home to, it's worth recognizing and spending some time with.
Well, we're brainwashed, okay? The system is a brainwashing system. It consistently brainwashes us all the time. The biggest aspect of brainwashing is fear, of course, okay? But fear is a human element as well. So fear can never be removed, but it can be faced.
The searching of the mind for knowledge, the searching of the mind for something that is real, for something that is true, for something that means something. And that can lead us into very dark, empty, lonely, greedy thoughts.
Where does that thought come from? Am I creating it? If I'm creating that particular thought or downloading it, where am I downloading it from? And is that thought efficacious or evidential? Does it have meaning? You know?
So our free will is making us choose this in a way, maybe not fully consciously, and so is our journey maybe to wake up from that, so that we can say, hey, no more.
Yes, hey,
so
no more.
So it's a beautiful divine plan in a way.
That's right, yes.
So another good exercise to do is if you have a major problem, or you see a major problem within yourself, if you look for the other side of that problem. If I have a problem with you, for example, okay, so I have a problem with you. Now I can break that problem right down to I have a problem with the way you talk. The other side of the problem is coming from me because I have that problem, you see? So as soon as I identify the part of the problem that's within me, I'll release my problem that I have with you externally.
The paradigm of trying to understand life, the universe, everything with our minds, and understand all of creation with our minds, and understand the purpose of that and who we are, with something very limited, to shift out of that and move into a place of knowing, of being, of isness, of expanse, of feeling, of reality in our hearts. And let our minds catch up with that eventually and try and figure that one out. But let it not be the master, let it not be leading us down dark alleyways, as it has done.
Empirical neurologists are starting to question orthodoxy in terms of the brain function. You know, the brain is considered as one organ. It's not. It's two completely separate organs divided by the corpus callosum. And the left brain is acknowledged to be that part of the human physical vehicle which provides us with the, if you like, the antenna to interpret through the five senses. It's the physical, empirical, material transmitter-receiver. The right brain is a completely different kettle of fish. And I mean, one hypothesis that's been put forward is that actually we don't retain any intelligence at all within the physical vehicle.
I completely resonate with that. We're just receivers.
We're tapping into the mainframe, as it were.
And emotions do get stored, I feel, in the body, in the cells.
But there's no question about that, because the empirical evidence is there with transplants. You know, and where people who receive organs from donors actually inherit some of the unique capabilities, capacities, belief systems of the donor. I mean, one of the classic examples.
I want to eat chips, and I really never like chips.
Exactly. Well, I say one of the classics is a lady from Canada who actually got the heart of an 18-year-old male. And because of her lifestyle, she was very ill, and she'd obviously been very careful about her diet. And when she actually came out of the anaesthetic from having the heart transplant, in fact, she had a heart and lung transplant, and the first thing she said was, I could murder a beer and a Kentucky Fried Chicken. I actually spent some time talking with a retired orthopedic surgeon, and he said, Ian, he said, you know, anyone who works in surgery knows that when you are giving people massive blood transfusion, it's absolutely essential that you keep them sedated, because they go through a massive emotional turmoil as the foreign blood sort of rushes through their system. So the point of making this observation is that, you know, we need to unleash ourselves, untie ourselves from the bounds of orthodoxy, and be prepared to consider something that, you know, orthodoxy considers to be completely crazy, because they don't really know.
So we know about the heart a lot more now, and it's not just for pumping blood, it's a whole issue that relates to things like compassion and consciousness and empathy. The cosmos is clever, the body is clever, and the more you learn, the more you realise just how clever the whole system is.
As I'm treating with ozone, there's a very high probability that we're going to overcome the physical illness. So what I say to the person is, as you recover from this, you might want to start developing a new mindset now, because I can tell you your physical problems are going to ease. So that's not going to be in your life anymore. But if you've got the old mindset, well, what's going to stop it just coming back? So start now thinking about how you want to think about yourself, how you want to approach the world, and what your philosophy of life is going to be. Grow into your higher self. Become that for which you pray.
People come and they expect a practitioner to cure them. The way I see it is that the body has an innate ability to heal itself given the right conditions. A lot of people are just, they're degenerating because of the system that we're in. And what I think that you're asking and what we're inquiring about is, how do we pick ourselves up and step out of that? And the first place to go is nutrition. Grow your own food, drink pure water, surround yourself with uplifting ideas and people, and get the issues and the tissues out. Our bodies are lodging all our history or her story in the very tissues of our body. And talking about them doesn't do it. We need to move that story, that energy in by deep breath work, by going out in nature and connecting.
Localizing food is bringing our food systems, our food sovereignty, our food independence back home. And home isn't just me with my little garden and my household. Home is my neighborhood. Home is my community. Home is my bioregion. So it's actually being interdependent with our food, from trading to growing to seed banks and seed exchanges, to value-added products that add this other potential for another income stream, to kids' gardens and schools and learning through that. It goes on and on. Community gardens, open orchards. There's a whole plethora of examples that both in this country and around the world say this momentum is strong. That's also a counterforce to ownership, power, control, chemical companies, buying up small family seed companies, terminated genes, GE crops, taking the food commodity further and further away from people's reach and controlling that to control the people. So people in the city, it's not just, again, my little apartment or my suburban house, my rental property, it's our neighbourhood. What spare land is in our neighbourhood? What tiny little area have you got? Let's take down the fence. Let's make a gate in the fence. Where's the wild harvest areas? How can we go and glean together on the outskirts of the city and make a picnic of it with our families so that we bring back the surplus fruit so we can add our labour to the farmers? It's a much bigger vision. Start with sprouts on your kitchen bench. Something living, a living food, sprouts in jars. That's the very first living, and a worm farm, so that your kids can see, so that you're feeding your scraps into your worm farm, and a tiny little area that is a container garden. That's what I start with city people, rental people, container gardens. Gardens in buckets, gardens in baskets, gardens in boxes, and you can move them around. Even much more advantage than having a garden in one place. You can have them greet the sun, and as the sun moves, you can move them. That's one thing, and the other thing is join a community garden.
It's so nice to see how your face lights up when you speak about this. What is this? What does this mean for you?
Not only my face lights up, my heart is just like almost exploding with joy and delight. What it is, it's a gift. It's a gift from nature. It's a gift from the ocean, and it's not predictable. You can't say, oh, I'm going to go to that forest this day and I'm going to harvest. Wild nature, wild harvest is never predictable. So it's sort of like, it's a surprise.
This kind of activity, you have to surrender, because you cannot manipulate it. I can't think, oh, I want a burger now, and walk to a snack bar and get a burger right there and then. Whereas this, you have to just see what nature gives you in that moment. So it requires an amount of surrendering.
I kind of really tuned into the seasons and what is the surplus, or what's the shedding off of nature from that season, and what can be used as a resource, with respect of not taking too much, leaving for others and leaving back for the earth and for the ocean. Everything you handle and everything you use in your life look at where does it come from? What's its cradle to grave, analysis? Where's it made? What about the people who've made it? Are they slave labor somewhere in China or whatever? And how can you actually create that thing differently? Have you got a local person who can make it? Welcome to Streamsong, name of my home. I first of all wanted to make sure that I used as much local materials as possible and natural materials, starting from this particular site, then this land, then Golden Bay, and I've achieved that. All of the clay in this home is excavated from these banks. All of the stones are from Golden Bay rivers and quarry. And all of the timber, which is structural timber, is from other farms, other forests in Golden Bay milled locally. Small, building small. So this is really like a sleep out in a way, but it's got an outdoor kitchen, and so it's fully in an outdoor shower, indoor-outdoor, sort of fully self-contained, really.
I don't see how you'd need more.
That's right.
Visiting Robina has opened up a whole world for me. To be shown how easy it is for people to make small steps towards a life more in harmony with the natural ways, I decided to film some more people who can give me insight into more sustainable living solutions.
We've been off the grid entirely the whole time we've been here for 24 years. And that's a journey. We've started with solar when it was really expensive. And now look at it, anyone can do it. Well, all the rural people in this district take their water from either tanks or rivers. Yeah, we get it from a river. We planted too many fruit trees. We've got food forests here and we're oppressed by fruit. There's so much fruit, but we give it to the birds in a way, but we also give it to our neighbours and we ask them to come up. And that is our solar water heater. And that is, well, Yvonne says that's the best purchase we've ever made in our life because it was $2,000, I think, at the time, quite expensive, but oh, it's just been so good. It's a family size. We had solar for many years, and now for the last 6 or 8 years, this is a micro hydro. You can see the water coming out there. I built a nice housing for it. Creates electricity 24/7, all night long. It's absolutely revolutionised our lives, and I really recommend them. The water's then going into a purpose-built wetland, and you've got an ecology happening there. I can show you the piece here. This is the Rolls Royce. This is a really good model with really good bearings. Saying when I came here 24 years ago as a city boy, and I'd swapped my house that I bought when I was 19 in Hamilton, and then the land disparity values meant that I had this 400 acres, I had this river, I was here by myself, I didn't have a partner then, I was like, but I was ecstatic. I remember being on the stretch of river and just whooping for joy that I was in nature and I could have this place, not personally, but be a part of it. Life on the rock shows us how healthy our ecosystem is. It's a very good test. When you're near a river, pick up some rocks and look underneath them. These are the buckets that are part of our toilet system.
What you've got there is shit.
Yeah, this is what it becomes. With the sawdust organic matter, this is already nearly done, isn't it?
It looks like proper soil.
Yeah.
And there's no smell.
All the paper's gone, there's no smell. I mean, if you want, I'll hold it with my hand, it's just like full of worms.
I also decided to visit a lady called Daring Donna, who has introduced a very interesting gift economy initiative.
We have created this amazing project called the Earth House, which we have been running now for a year. It's self-funding and self-resourced by a part of this amazing community in the faraway north called Peria. And there's a group of us that have got together and said, okay, how can we work together and create something that is organic, zero waste, alternative energy, based on gift, coming from the heart, love and action. And this is it, the Earth House.
Yeah, to me, the Earth House is, there's so many different aspects to it. We want to create something positive in the world. There's no sort of dwelling on all the crap that's going on out there, and That's another thing, we're sort of focusing on what we're doing.
It's very much a community-centred and based initiative. You know, a lot of the food is coming from our gardens, we're going for organics. We've got this wonderful cycle which goes, you know, all the waste from the kitchen goes into the compost goes onto the garden, and then the produce from the garden goes back into the kitchen.
Rather than having a menu, we look at our gardens to see what's in there. So for instance, fresh feta, goat's feta, Janika makes that from the goats down the valley, carrots and beetroot all from the valley, carrot dip all from the valley, greenery from the people just out that's sitting out at the table, they grow all the greenery for us, corn brought in. Yeah, so the whole philosophy was let food be your medicine, because I just saw it there.
I've lived in the area for 26 years in a community, an isolated community, so I've had to be very resourceful with cooking and growing and whatever in my garden. So I've got a few ideas for some strange vegetables that we can use and things that are easy to grow, basically.
We are based in gift economy, which is you give with great love from your heart, whatever you feel to give.
They pay what they want to pay. Not only that, but everyone receives what they need.
There's no tables or individually for people to sit and eat on. There's community, so people sit around and talk together. There's no sort of separation.
We're not actually focusing on the commerce of the enterprise. We're just focusing on the energy of it, how everyone's feeling, how we're looking after each other, how we're heading into the future.
I thought it was amazing to see all these projects, you know, to visit this small community here in Northland, New Zealand. I realized that it takes all sorts of people, basically. You know, some people are really drawn to being in the middle of nowhere, like up here. But other people might be more inclined to be with large groups of people in a creative hub, more sort of the city kind of constellations. And it would be great in a new paradigm if there was a solution for everyone, you know? We can't just have one mold for everyone. We have to make space for the authenticity of each individual.